The Demogorgons, Mind Flayer, and Vecna have been some of the most iconic monsters we've seen in recent media history. So being the D&D nerd I am, I can't help but wonder what some of the other many monsters in D&D could look like in Stranger Things. Hello, I'm your Squawk Art House host, aka moi, aka Riot Roxy, your favorite and only 80s radio show host here on YouTube. Today you're getting brand new, never-before-seen Stranger Things content while I get to share my art and speculate on new monsters, their designs, functions, and place in the lore. So grab a snack, get cozy, and turn your radio up while we take a look at Squawk's very first creature feature. And I'll warn you now, folks, these monsters get darker as we go. This first monster was always going to make the list, so who better to start with than the Beholder himself? If you know D&D, you knew it was coming, and if you don't worry, I've always got you covered. In D&D, a Beholder is an ancient floating horror, a massive eye surrounded by smaller tentacle eye stalks, each capable of firing a different magical ray. Anti-gravity, paralysis, fear, disintegration? I know I wouldn't want to be caught in a fight with this thing, but I think this tangle of tentacles and eyes is just too good to pass up for Stranger Things. But for Stranger Things, I don't want to look at this thing and think of a wizard tower. No, I think this thing belongs in Hawkins' lab. See, this tangle of eyes and limbs immediately makes me think failed experiment. And I'm sorry for anyone who sees where I'm going with this. And what do we know the lab experiments on the most? We know too well they were trying to recreate Henry Creel's mind powers, but he also has his other monster Vecna form. So it makes perfect sense to me in the lore that the lab would try to recreate this as well. So the Beholder, in air quotes, is the failed experiments of children who had their minds and bodies warped. And instead of the main eye floating, I want it to drag itself and hold itself up by its tentacle eye stalks. I want it to feel like this thing hurts just by being alive. And here's where this version stops being just a cool monster design and starts fitting into the sadder side of Stranger Things, because the way it fights tells you exactly what was done to it. So how does it look in action? How and why does this thing attack? Well, how it attacks is similar to D&D with its eyes. We still want this to be recognizable as a Beholder-ish creature, so this thing's powers are more like what we've seen in the show instead of D&D, hallucinations and telekinesis. But the reason why it attacks this way is supposed to reflect that this is the mind of a child that has been completely shattered due to experimentation. Elle, Kali, and Vecna can all use facets of their powers as they choose when they choose, but these Beholders have had their minds broken, so each eye is almost like one fragment of a torn apart mind activating for a moment, and using each facet of its power separately from the whole of its mind. One eye uses telekinesis a la Elle to throw opponents wildly around, seemingly with no thought. Another eye could flash a victim's worst fears and memories into their minds with the only goal of hurting them mentally, via Vecna. And one eye could make someone hallucinate, showing someone fighting it, their friend get hurt next to them when really they're fine. Or even worse, it could make them hallucinate that the Beholder is running away, so they chase after it, not knowing it never moved at all and they were actually running straight towards it. This thing's mind is so shattered it can only attack what each fragment of its mind is looking at directly. And this thing even has a place in Stranger Things' themes of childhood abuse and victimhood. I think this monster could be a talking point of the perfect victim complex a lot of people have when it comes to treating survivors equally, where victims who act quote-unquote correctly or in a more socially palatable way get treated with the empathy, respect, and patience they deserve, whereas people who develop more deeper psychological problems and act out because of their trauma don't get the same treatment. Elle is just as much of an experiment as these things are, but Elle gets treated with respect and patience, whereas these things get demonized and attacked, reflecting the perfect victim problem we see in society. And as for its appearance, well, you can see it for yourself right here with viewer discretion encouraged. I'm proud of my take on the Beholder, but I hope you didn't get too attached, because this next one is another creature I can't believe didn't get its time in the show. If any of you thought I'd forget about the Mimic, you'd be sorely mistaken, and you might need to get your eyes checked, because it was in the thumbnail of the video. But I'd hold off on making that optometrist appointment if I were you, because you won't want to miss what's in store for the Mimic. Unlike nearly every monster in Stranger Things, what makes this one unique is this monster is only found in the Upside Down, adding to the fear factor of the Mimic and the danger of the Upside Down. Because if you didn't know, the Mimic is exactly what it says it is. It mimics everyday items, and when someone gets just a little too close, it'll open up its massive chompers and try to catch any unsuspecting victims in its jaws of never-ending teeth. So adding this creepy creature to the Upside Down would really add to the feeling of danger around every corner. And if you're thinking, okay, that's creepy but manageable, hold on to that thought, because this exact idea is what makes the final creature so horrifying in comparison. But hold on to your seats as well, folks, because I haven't just made this thing fit into the lore. No, I'm fitting it into the narrative themes as well. That's right, I've thought of everything with this one, and we all know Stranger Things has a theme of robbed childhood, and that a part of growing up is not seeing familiar childhood things the same way. So interacting with anything from what looks like home and then finding out it's secretly a monster, I mean, this idea would work so well for the show. I can't believe this or something like it didn't ever make it in. I mean, imagine the scene where Nancy picks up her stuffed bear and its stomach opens up to a massive cavern of teeth. She could just shoot it and it could be played for laughs because it's tiny, but even then that joke could be a subtle nod to the death of childhood. And that's on the Mimic, our favorite icon, turning your childhood into a thing of nightmares. But it makes you wonder, or at least it does for me, the Mimic is only dangerous when you get close. What happens when the danger isn't hiding under your bed, or is your bed? What if it's right under your feet? Okay, quick check-in before we keep going. If you're scared of deep water, tight spaces, or that feeling that something huge is lurking where you can't quite see it, you might want to turn your radio down a notch. Because this next one, this is the monster that proves that Hawkins isn't safe either. In Dungeons & Dragons, the purple worm is a massive subterranean predator, blind, ancient, and unstoppable. It doesn't stalk, it doesn't hunt, it burrows. And that makes it perfect for Stranger Things. Because think about it, the Upside Down already feels hollow, like something has been moving through it long before the kids ever showed up. In my version, however, I think this thing fits so perfectly into Hawkins and is a part of the Upside Down, because the purple worm's whole thing is burrowing. What if this thing was the main builder of the tunnels in Season 2? Also, the Upside Down, and minor spoilers here for Season 5, we know that the Upside Down isn't a mirror dimension anymore. What is it, folks? It's a wormhole. I mean, come on, the pun potential alone makes me so sad we never saw this in the show. It could also set up the sort of final boss of the season that Season 3, 4, and 5 have. And here's the part that made me stop drawing and just stare at my sketchbook for a minute. The purple worm doesn't attack randomly like the Beholder, and it doesn't sit and wait like the Mimic. It's blind and it burrows, which means it reacts to sound. Which means every gunshot, every scream, every radio signal trying to call for help, and that's basically just ringing the dinner bell. So now we've seen the horror that waits below, but what happens to the people who don't quite survive and don't quite die? The purple worm reminds you of how small you are. The next creature, it shows you what happens when you're trapped long enough to forget who you were. And just a quick signal check, if you're enjoying this creature feature, consider liking or subscribing. Squawk Art House has got a lot more strange on the way and lets me know to keep the broadcast up. And with that out the way, let's get back into it. Now, this one might be a bit unexpected on this list, because there's definitely far more iconic monsters I could have picked from, but for me, these guys are perfect for not Hawkins, not the Upside Down, but the Hellscape. That's right, we're adding monsters to the Hellscape, because the Hellscape is totally not scary enough as it is. And if you heard my last broadcast, you know I love the look of this place, so of course it would find its way into this one. If we look at the Hellscape like a wound, giants are what happens when it never heals. Giants to me are this hulking mass of power and mystery. In D&D, giants are ancient beings, literally being born from a god, and predate nearly every other species and race in D&D. And in Stranger Things, the Hellscape is this truly ancient place that even by the end of the series, we still really don't know how it works. Which means it's the perfect place for giants to roam. And the way they fit into the lore, as I've written them, giants are all the lost souls that found their way into the Hellscape by one way or another, and never found their way out. And what really gets me about this idea, and where it stopped feeling like monster design and started feeling like actual horror, is that these giants don't attack out of malice. They attack because they don't remember how not to. We don't know how long this place has existed, so these people that have been in the hellscape have essentially just been molded by it and become part of it. These are people that had everything they knew about themselves and the world around them completely shattered, and are now forced to eternally walk the hellscape in search of an exit that doesn't exist for them. The people and music that could have brought them back died ages ago. So for eternity, and as long as the hellscape exists, so do they, carrying around dead trees and massive rocks to defend themselves against whatever else is in there with them. And this adds to the hellscape being, well, the hellscape. I couldn't imagine a worse fate for someone. And if you noticed a pattern, broken minds, corrupted environments, places that trap people instead of killing them, that wasn't accidental. Every monster here is just a different answer to the same question. What happens when something is never allowed to heal? I really didn't think this topic would be so dark and sad, but I still hope you liked my monster ideas and designs. And I promise the next broadcast will be a lot happier. And on that cheerful note, that sadly brings our broadcast to a close. This is your Squawk Art House host, Riot Roxy, signing off. Remember to stay creative, stay cozy, and stay strange. And I'll catch you on the next frequency.